Welcome to Talk Deep, a podcast that is all about having real conversations with real people, discussing the topics most people aren't willing to talk about. Join your host, Pastor Jordan, and his guests, including musicians, influencers, and artists. Whether it is religion, relationships, addiction, or abuse, get ready to talk about those taboo topics that people like to hide under the rug. Let's get started. Here is your host, Pastor Jordan.
What's up, guys? It's Pastor Jordan. Welcome to Talk Deep, a podcast that's all about having real conversations with real people where we talk about the taboo topics that people like to hide under the rug. Today, I'm with somebody that I've just recently met, but he'll go ahead and introduce himself. So take 15 seconds, tell me your name, your age, a little bit about yourself.
I'm Jodie Williams. I'm 29. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, and I'm just blessed to be here.
Yeah, definitely. But we'll start with the question everybody wants to know. What's your favorite thing to cook?
My favorite thing to cook, chicken parmesan.
Yeah?
Definitely, yes.
I'm honestly not big on Italian food, but chicken parmesan is a delicious dish. Definitely.
Yes.
Super good. And you reached out to me through Instagram, and you said that you were a viewer of my videos, right?
Yes, most definitely.
How long have you been watching my videos?
About 6 to 8 months now. As soon as I kind of got into sobriety, I started watching a lot of it because I'm a big Juice WRLD Next fan, and just the messages you have in them captivated me and made me understand who I was as a person better, and everything about like God and the way I viewed God and the way God viewed me. It helped me realize that I'm worth something.
Right. Definitely. And I love to talk about that. And I honestly, you had sent me a little bit of your story on Instagram, and I let my fiance read it, and we were in the car. She was about to start crying just because your story is powerful. It's deep. You know, some parts are very sad almost, but you seem to have such a good outlook. So, you know, like I said, you had sent me your message, and I read it, and I was kind of like, whoa, this dude's really been through it. So you're 29. Let's just start from the beginning. Tell me a little bit about, you know, your upbringing.
So like I messaged you when I was 2, my dad died. My mom was really bad off on drugs and alcohol and everything. So I kind of grew up in the foster care system after that until about 7. Then I went with my dad's side of the family, and whenever that happened, I got introduced to how negative the world can be. I mean, from day one of my cousins, he would sexually assault me every day. Well, every morning I'd come home, my aunt would beat me. At night, my other 2 cousins would just torture me, break bones, lock me in a closet for days and stuff.
So let me go back. You said that your father passed away when you were about 2.
Yeah.
How did your father pass away?
From what I understand, either he was drunk driving and got in a wreck, or he got hit by a drunk driver. I never really got the full story, but something along those lines. And
so you said at 7 you went to your dad's side of the family. Why is that?
Because my mom had went back to prison. She was on parole, and they wound up drug testing her, found out she was still using, and wound up going back.
Okay. And then, so you said that on your dad's side of the family, you were sexually assaulted, you were abused, you were, you know, basically not being raised, but you were growing up in a very hostile environment. And I think, I've never, you know, really talked about it on my channel, but being a man, you know, I've been sexually abused. Most men don't really know about that, but it happens, you know, statistically it still happens. And you said to the point where you were breaking bones and...
Yeah, like my hand, I don't know if you can really see it.
Oh, yeah,
but my hand, it's been broken at least 14 times. On the back of my head, I have all kind of scars. My ribs have been broken, just all kind of crazy stuff.
Wow. Wow. So after that, when did your mom get out of prison?
She got out of prison, I'm wanting to say around March of when I was 9 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, and she wound up getting pregnant with my little brother's dad, Paul, and whenever that happened, they kind of, what's the word, allowed each other to be able to go way off the charts with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
enabled each other.
Yeah, I said that
So,
yesterday. I was talking about it. They say that, couples that are addicted together basically, they spiral each other downwards instead of helping each other get out of it. I feel like to be in a
yeah,
relationship, it's almost harder to get clean. And so you said it in the perfect way, that they enabled each other.
yeah.
And so what was that like?
Well, my mom pretty much, whenever she had my little brother, it was in 2002, and she just kind of disappeared out the equation, and his dad went to jail
Oh wow.
for drugs and everything. So I was stuck in a hotel with a newborn pretty much at 10 years old, and I didn't know what to do, but I knew about drugs and what she did. So I kind of dropped out of school for 4 years.
Wow.
And I started just moving drugs for people to be able to keep the money up to pay for the hotel. So that went on till I was about 14. And after that, she came back one day and she was like, "Can you watch Justin?" She came and she wanted to leave again. I'm like, "No, I'm not watching him." And she beat the crap out of me. And whenever she did, that was the point in my life where I'm like, this is enough. I
Yeah.
need to get us out of this situation. I blamed myself for a long time about it, but I did call the cops on her, and she went back to prison.
Yeah.
And that's when me and my little brother went back into foster care. And, by that point, I'm 14. I mean, I had the childhood I had. I didn't like authority figures. So
Right. Definitely.
I went into foster care and kept getting kicked out of school after school after school and having to move until I finally found the person I call my dad now. He's my foster dad, or he was, but he's always been there for me. He kind of tried to help teach me right from wrong and everything in his own way. He's not perfect either. Nobody is. But
Right.
I mean, we all tried. And that was the rough part, was me coming to the realization, because for a long time I didn't believe in God. I thought I was my own greater power. And that's where all my life just kept crashing until I finally found God.
Yeah, definitely. We think that we can take control of our lives, but then at the same time, we're not really good at being in control of our lives to begin with, and I think you hit it on the head.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect, you know? And so for you to grow up the way you did, it's so understandable why you would have a lot of the problems that you did, having an issue with authority figures and having issues at school. A lot of times people see kids who create issues or who they consider to be problem child, but really what they're doing is crying out for help. They don't know how to manage their emotions or how to say, this is what's going on in my life. I'm not having the best time. I'm not really, in a healthy environment. So I need help. Nobody really sees that. I remember going to school and my mom was addicted to drugs, and it was really difficult too. And I was always acting out, but nobody ever saw it as a cry for help. And for you were in foster care. I've heard a lot of people say that foster care is not as good as people make it seem on the outside. Did you feel like you had a good
Yeah.
experience, or?
So I feel like part of it, because I'm one of those people, I take responsibility for all my actions. I feel like it could have been a lot better experience if I would have just stepped up and not caused all the problems that I did, because I was in a few good homes that really wanted to like adopt me and try.
Yeah.
But at that point in my life, I couldn't. I was so numb to emotions and to everything around me. I really didn't care at that point what happened.
Right. You were back in school, you got kicked out, you were having issues, but you are a college graduate.
Yes. So whenever I turned 18, my foster dad, he was like, "Look," because I got out the group home, I went back and lived with him in like November, and I turned 18 in January.
Okay.
They gave me a full script of Adderall and Klonopin and everything, and me being the way I was, I just stayed up for like 2 weeks, and he's like, look, when you turn 18, if you're not off of all of this for your little brother, you got to go.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, I'm down to leave. And I went and stayed with my best friend after that. And I was like, I need to do something with my life. So I decided I was going to ITT Tech for computer networking systems. I wound up going to do that and just sticking it through for 2 years. And I graduated.
That's, you deserve all the respect for that. I mean, not only for you to have gone to school and then got out of school and then gone to school and got out of school and then, you decided to drop out, but you got your GED and then you went to college and you got your diploma, you graduated and you did something, there's all the respect in the world for you. And I think I come from that type of lifestyle where everybody around me was, doing drugs and not really setting the best example. And I watched a lot of those people get clean, and I have nothing but respect for them because I see how difficult it is. A lot of people would look at somebody like my parents or somebody like you or me who, finally decided, hey, I'm in control of my choices. I need to do something about it, and started to make wise choices. And I feel like they can't give that the respect that it deserves, but you definitely deserve that. And so,
Thank you.
Obviously you're here, and I'm here to see if we can help anybody with, similar issues. So eventually, you just had mentioned it a little bit, pills were a problem, but I know that other drugs were issues for you too. When did that begin?
Yeah. So really, I had laid off of everything until I was 25 after that point, and my mom overdosed. And I found that out because I was wanting to find her so I could forgive her.
Mm.
And the day I finally found out where she was, her brother came to me and he's like, hey, look, your mom overdosed. She's dead. And I'm like, what? Like, and that really hurt me. So in my mind, it's a horrible idea looking back at it, but I wanted to find out why she chose drugs and alcohol over us.
Yeah.
So I went to the bar and I started drinking, and that led to me becoming an alcoholic slowly but surely, because I found out the whole time I'm like, I quit when I want. I can do this. I can do that.
Yeah.
And then one day I'm like, all right, I'm going to quit, and realized I couldn't.
Mm.
And I started introduced to other drugs through the bar, cocaine, weed, and then heroin and mojo or spice. I don't know what y'all call it, but that, and it just became a downward spiral. I wound up going to jail for the first time when I was 27 twice.
Wow.
I went once for weed and then got arrested for heroin. And within 3 months, I watched my whole life crash, like completely. And I got out of jail. I was in there 3 months. I'm like, I got this. I'm not going to use again. And within 10 minutes of me being out of jail, I'm back using heroin. I'm like, why can't I stop?
Yeah.
And that's when I realized I needed to go to a treatment center or something and seek the help that I need, because I realized I couldn't do it on my own or I would die.
Right.
And
definitely. And I feel like a lot of, I see it so often. It's just so normal for kids or even, younger adults who grew up watching their parents be addicted. They grow up the whole time thinking, I'm never going to be like that. I never want to be like that. And then it's so easy for us to slip into the same thing. I feel like, you look at somebody like that, or you look at, if you were on the outside and you had never had any issues with drugs, you would look at somebody and say, your parents, really damaged themselves by using them. Why would you use them? But you don't really understand until it's your parents or until you're in that situation. But it's so common for the child of another adult who was using drugs to follow in the same way, or even any example that a parent sets. But yeah, I feel like there is almost like a curiosity there of, well, they did this and there had to have been a reason why they continued to do this. And I think, when you talk about addiction, people really don't realize that they're addicted until they try to stop, right? It's all fun and games till you realize that you're not in control anymore. And so you went to jail, and then you got out, and then you were continuing to realize that you couldn't get off of drugs. What do you think was the lowest point for you?
The lowest point, me and two of my friends, I was asleep. They called my grandpa, told him I was in jail, and got $500 from him, got his vehicle, came and woke me up, and we all went to Arkansas, and then they told me what happened. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I mean, we're getting drugs, and he's not mad. It's all good. And he called me, and he gave me the rundown of how much money I've taken from him, how much they've taken from him, and what all, like, I'm destroying in my own life. He just told me everything point blank. And at that point, I realized just what I've become. Everything I used to say that I disliked my mother for, that I resented her for, I'd become that exact person. And I looked at them, I'm like, hey, look, get in the car, we're going back, I'm bringing my grandpa's truck. So I brought it to him, I dropped them off, I brought him his truck, and at that point I looked at him like, I need you to take me back to Gonzales. I will be homeless, but I have to get away from here or I will die, because of how bad it was getting. I had overdosed once already, and it was scary because they didn't call the cops or anything. They just put me in the bed and let me sit there for 3 days until I woke up. And it's like when I woke up, I realized, like, wow, I could have died.
Yeah.
But that wasn't even enough to stop me. It was like, okay, I won't do that much again. But then I do every time. So
I feel like to that point. I feel like for different people too, it's different. You know, some people will kind of get high every day and you know, moderately, and then some people will kind of struggle with it, kind of fight it, and then eventually you kind of give in and you binge and you do a ton, and then you're like, wow, this is awful, I'm never going to do this again, and then it's just the cycle repeats. And you know, it's so normal, I guess the route that you took, or the route that you were on, because people don't realize, you know, when drug addicts or people who are suffering or struggling with addiction are trying to get the high, you know, we're basically willing to do anything. And a lot of times it's, you know, taking things from family, it's borrowing money, it's lying, I need money for this, or, you know, the people we affect the most are the ones that are closest to us. I remember, you know, my family pawning things, taking things back to the store, lying about money and all these other things. And for you to realize, hey, this is really not just affecting me, but affecting people around me. And then seeing that you needed help is one of the first steps. And maybe, you know, that's not the point where you just are clean forever after that. But those kind of like moments in your head where you're like, you know what, there's really something going on here. Those are the moments that lead up to somebody getting clean. And so you decided, okay, I need help. And maybe, you know, it wasn't the last time, but so you were going where?
Oh, so I was going back to the city that I kind of grew up in with my foster dad. And I had went there and I'd stayed the night at his house. And then I found out my taxes had hit and I got my stimulus. So I went and got a hotel for a month. That way, you know, in the meantime, I can get a job. I could start trying to build myself up and leave everything alone. And I did. I had 2 jobs. I was riding my bike 8 miles a day to both of them, just working nonstop for about 2 or 3 months. I wound up getting my own place. He gave me his truck. It was '06 Silverado with 100,000 miles. I mean, everything was going good, and I had this random thought, you know, just go get some mojo. You'll be okay. Take a couple of days off of work. So for some reason, I just did it, and I called work. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna need off a couple of days. I'm not feeling good. Drove out to New Orleans, got it, driving back, wound up passing out at the wheel so high I wrecked the truck. Had to go back home. They kicked me out. Wound up going back to the hotel, getting robbed for everything I had, lost both my jobs. Wow. All of this in a matter of 1 day. And it's like, I would say that was my absolute lowest point, because at that point I was either going to kill myself or I was going to see what God had in store. So I called the church I used to belong to, and they told me about, you know, recovery and rehabs and all of that. And they were like, if you find a place to go, we'll pay for your ticket on a bus and we'll get you out there. So I called about 40 places and nobody took my insurance. And I asked God, I'm like, look, if this next place don't take me, I'm just ending it. And I tied everything. I had everything ready to just kill myself because I figured they wouldn't. And I called them and they're like, yeah, we could send a van to get you right now.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. And it's 4 hours away from where I was. That's where I am now, in that city, Alexandria.
Okay.
But after that, I came out here, you know, I went to a 28-day program. I got out and I relapsed. I wound up getting kicked out the house and realizing like it's really serious, how serious it is. I watched two people have seizures smoking the same thing I was smoking, and it's like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
So I went back, and instead of just trying to speed through the 28 days and just get through it, I sat there and really just thought about everything they were saying and understanding that it's not about me or what I can do. It's about what God has in store for me and how I need to learn to trust him and let him work through my life, not me use him to get what I want or to rebuild my life.
Yeah.
And that's when it really hit, and I got out, and I've been sober since.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, and it's not really their fault, but the way that Christianity has kind of hit America is that God is a means to an end. You know, if you use God, you'll get the amount of money you want, or you'll get, you know, this, or you'll get that. And I've even said, and it's hard for a lot of people to grasp, but I feel like you would understand very easily, is that freedom can become an idol. Basically, you get so captivated and so focused on just freedom that you're not really worshiping the God that would give you the freedom. And if you're worshiping freedom, if that's your only goal, you'll never get free, right? You said it right there, that God wasn't there to just get you clean so that you could live your life and get it back on track, but God became the center of your life, and everything else kind of came as a byproduct of that.
Yeah.
And so,
most definitely.
Yeah, for sure. And so, you know, I feel like a lot of people have this really negative view on rehabilitation and centers of different things that you can go to. A lot of people try to just do it on their own. And for you, you saw that it wasn't going to happen. But you're also saying that you understood that there's a difference between going and really taking an inward look and just going and kind of rushing through it. You know, yeah. I feel like there's a difference between staying, like not getting high for 28 days or choosing to take those 28 days and get sober. So tell me a little bit more about how you were focusing inward and working on yourself for those 28 days and how that made an actual difference as far as when you got out.
Like, I pretended to try. I pretended to care. I still didn't understand my emotions, what was going on and everything. And I just kind of coasted through it. Autopiloted, I guess, per se. But so the second time I went is when I realized the shame that it brought, that I felt whenever I walked in. Because when I left, everybody's like, you're going to succeed, you're going to do great. And I mean, within a month or two, I'm back in there. So it's like I really realized I was just playing the system. And within 10 minutes of being back, one of the guys I really respect looked at me and he goes, you know, you're only going to get what you put in. And I'm like, okay, it kind of just hit me different. And I realized all the utilities they had there. Like, I have PTSD, I have mental illnesses, and they have a treatment called EMDR, which helps recategorize the PTSD and traumas inside your brain through rapid eye movement. And I decided to give that a try to help my mental side. And then I started talking to counselors about what I've been through. And I started talking to other people who were addicts and had an understanding of it. And they would break things down and explain it to me, like the 12-step program and stuff like that, and what it truly means and how it helps you achieve sobriety. So I started learning all these different revenues and avenues that I had to be able to utilize in my own recovery.
Yeah. I feel like definitely, you know, when somebody grows up and all they've seen as far as somebody coping with things is turning to self-medication, it's only natural that you would turn to the same thing. And so now you're talking to counselors about things that you've been through, and you're talking to other people who understand that there has to be other ways to cope with things that you struggle with, right? Because that's why people are addicted, I think, is that they're medicating something else. And so for you, having gone through so many different things, it's so easy to just self-medicate so that you can cope with those emotions, right? Because I had said that earlier, somebody who as a kid is having all these issues in school, it's because they don't know how to regulate their emotions. And, you know, you turn to drugs or people get addicted, then they still don't know. So then you begin to learn how to deal with the things that you've dealt with in life. And so you're counseling and you're talking to other people, how was that helping you?
It was helping me better understand my own emotions, and that's something I never really understood because I was numb most of my life. It's
Yeah.
like I never had to deal with it. I just coasted through everything.
Yeah.
No matter what was going on, I lived in that moment, and I didn't care about the past, the future, anything. I lived for that second,
Yeah.
and it was one of those things, understanding what depression really is, like
Yeah.
why I felt the way I felt, why I isolated myself, why I became withdrawn and just started, as you said, self-medicating. And that's why I really respect Juice World and X, because that's something they're really good at communicating, is how they feel, the emotional
Yeah.
side of it. Especially X with the emotions and everything, and Juice World with the addiction. I really relate to both of them so much through a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. For you, most of the things that were going on for you were negative, and so it's almost like you have to turn your heart off to survive.
Yeah.
I definitely understand that, where you have to almost turn, you say you were so numb all the time. That's what I think depression really is. I don't think it's just being sad. I don't think it's situational. I think depression is the ability, or maybe even not an ability anymore. It just happens, but you're kind of turned off. You're kind of turned off as far as emotionally, but you had to learn to do that to survive. And then now, anytime something happens, it's so easy to feel the same way again. It's so easy to revert back to that state. And so drugs would be so easy to turn to because that's what they are to begin with. They're numbers. They numb you, or they kind of take your mental state to a different place. But really, like you had said, you can't get away from that without God. You can't get away from that without replacing it with something else. I feel like so many people, when they think of getting clean, they just think, I'm just going to stop and that's it. But you don't have the tools to be able to just stop. Because if you don't replace the drugs with something else, you'll go right back to the drugs because you don't know what to do. You're overwhelmed with all these situations. And now you're talking about, I realized that I had all these tools and I had all these things that were given to me to stay clean. And, you really tapped into all those, and it made a big difference. But I think is really, really awesome. And so you are learning how to deal with your emotions. You're learning how to handle those different things. And tell me a little bit more about how you began to have an understanding of who God was and his, purpose for you and all of that.
So for me, like, I grew up and I would go to church and stuff with my friends on the block. I would go to church camps and stuff when I was younger. And I always understood who God was. But it came to a point where I was like, kind of like you were talking in one of your videos about, I think it was the XXX video. It was about why did God cause all of this bad for me?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I got to the point to where I felt like X did in that song. I was like, screw God. Like, I was done with it. And I just decided to live by being my own higher power. And every time I would just do that, it would crash. And I started to realize, like, okay, whenever I'd sit down and I'd pray to God and Jesus and talk to them about stuff that was going on, within months, it would always be fixed.
Mm.
And then I would go back to, okay, well, I did that.
Yeah.
And whenever I'd go back to that, I'd lose it all again.
Mm.
Since I became sober, like, I've never held a job longer than 2 months. I've had the same job for almost 10 now. I've realized that my purpose isn't just to be self-destructive. For a long time now, I've always believed my testimony was something that was supposed to be shared.
Yeah.
Because I've been through so much, I feel like a lot of people can relate with different parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
Or all of it. And understand that no matter what you go through, you can always make that choice to look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went through all that horrible stuff, but at the same time, if I didn't, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with who I am right now.
Yeah, and I feel like you definitely should be. Which brings me kind of to where I was wanting to go to next. Now that you've held down a job and you said that you have a vehicle and you're doing, super well for yourself, what do you feel like has been the the biggest victory so far, right? I asked you what your lowest point was in the past 10, 12 months. What's been the highest point for you? What's been the, wow, I'm really proud of myself. I'm really succeeding.
I would say because in the 12-step program, they have one step that's amends.
Mm.
And like I had explained, I took everything from my grandpa, my great-grandma's jewelry, like you were saying, pawning stuff. I went and pawned all of her stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I had to go back down there for court in February. And I had some money I had been saving up and everything. And I wanted a PlayStation or Xbox or TV or something to just be able to do. And I went to the same pawn shop I pawned her stuff at, and I found her watch.
Oh, wow.
The one I had pawned. So I had bought it back, and I never told my grandpa that I had pawned any of her stuff. Like, he didn't know. And I bought it back and went back and handed it to him. And in my mind, he's going to be like, get out of my house, like, done with me. And he looked at me and just told me he was proud of me. And whenever he did that, like, that was the most uplifting thing I had felt to this day still, was just knowing, like, even though I messed up, even though I did wrong, the fact that my actions now are trying to make it right,
yeah,
he's proud of me for that.
Yeah, that's powerful, dude. That's, oh man, it's because I've seen so many people go through the same things, and people who are close to me. My mom was pawning things of my grandparents and things of mine, and it is such a powerful thing to watch her be the person that she is now. Or I have a cousin, the same thing, and you telling that story, it's so positive and so powerful, because you would think that he would realize, oh wow, he's pawned a bunch of stuff, get out of my house. That would be the fear. But really, the people around you love you. The people around you want you to succeed. And when they see you doing things that are responsible and that are, outside of yourself, I feel like that's the moment where they really understand that you're winning at life, right? Because drug addiction is such it's selfish, but it's not purposely selfish, right? You don't get addicted to drugs because you only think about yourself. But drug addiction makes you only think about getting high. It makes you only think about one thing. And it's only to get away from everything else. And so then, you realize, wow, I was so selfish. And then all it does is spiral you to do more drugs. I talk about this a lot, and I don't think everybody understands it, because a lot of people get frustrated at it. But when you feel all of this shame from relapsing, or you feel all of this shame from failing, it's so easy to just go diving right back into drugs to medicate that pain too. Yeah. And for you to have come past that, and then not only are you doing the right thing, but you're willing to deal with the heartache of what he may tell you, for you to do that, that really shows that you're winning. That really shows that you're thinking way beyond just yourself, way beyond just staying clean. Now you're doing things that are way outside of yourself. And I do agree. I feel like that's the moment where you could look at yourself and really think that you're really getting it together. So that's really awesome to hear.
Thank you.
Definitely. And so tell me a little bit more about, I know now I have some people say, that they're addicts for life. And then I have some people say that they're clean, they'll never go back to it. Tell me a little bit about where you're at right now as far as continuing to stay sober, right? You're still rebuilding the way that your brain comprehends a lot of things and deals with anything that comes towards you, right? Drugs create a pathway in your brain to deal with, stress, to deal with things that are tough, to deal with things that are good. And now your brain is reforming all those pathways to live a sober life. Tell me where you're at in that process, and how that's kind of affecting you, and how you're, continuing to stay sober when things do get tough. Because, we both know being a Christian doesn't mean everything is going to be easy.
No.
You may deal with plenty more of difficult things, but that doesn't mean that you want to, go back to drugs. You obviously are so serious about staying sober. How do you make sure that you do that? Because somebody may be listening, and they may be struggling to stay sober. They may be relapsing over and over, because when tough things come, they don't know how to deal with it. How do you face life now?
So for me, like, I have a lot of different avenues I have that help keep me sober. Like, one, I live in a sobriety house, a Oxford house, and I know I can go afford my own apartment, but right now I don't trust myself to.
Mm.
I also go to outpatient 2 or 3 times a week for 3 hours, and I'll sit there and talk with the group and with the counselor about what all's going on. If I have an issue with something, I can be like, okay, this is my issue. What can I do to fix it? And even other addicts and alcoholics and people dealing with depression in there, they can sit down and tell me, hey, this is what I did to get through it. I
Yeah.
have accountability people that I call on a regular, that I see or that I live with, and I'm like, hey, like one of the ones who came in here joking earlier, if I'm having an issue, I'll go sit down with him and talk with him and be like, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is how I'm feeling, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And they can sit there with me and help me understand it and go through it, and not have to rely on drugs and alcohol to be able to get through it, but rely on the people God put in my life
Yeah.
to be able to understand myself better whenever, because no matter what, we understand how we feel truly,
Yeah.
but we're not objective to ourselves. If
Very
we go
true.
to somebody who could look at things from a different perspective and completely objective to the situation, they can point out things that you never saw
Yeah.
and that you're not realizing you're doing. And that kind of helps me a lot, pull myself out of myself,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I know that, and I talk about it all the time because I have so many people who message me who are still addicted or who are struggling, and it could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it can be pornography, but the truth is the same for all of them. I tell them, your addiction is going to be so much bigger and it's going to stay bigger until you drag it out into the light and you allow other people to come around you and help you. And I say that the prescription that God gives for dealing with a lot of these things is relationship. He wants you to allow other people to come into your mess, to come into your ugly life that you've created and help you build it back up together. Because we can't do it alone. There's not going to be anybody that has the mental strength and the emotional strength and the tools to be able to build their life by themselves. It's doing exactly what you said. It's allowing yourself to almost play this mental chess game with the other side of you, right? Because it becomes this inward battle and you have to really think about it. How can I beat that side of me so bad that I won't give into it? And then you said it's by not trusting that side. It's by not allowing myself to live alone even though I could afford it. It's by making sure that I'm vulnerable when I meet with those people 2 to 3 times a week, and that I'm so real about it. Because going back to what you had said about the 28 days, you faked it the first time. You kind of just got through it and you realized nothing had changed. It would be so easy to meet with those people and to talk to people and to fake it and not be vulnerable, but it doesn't actually change anything. For you to take your mess that has just been life and you drag it out in front of people and you say, this is what I'm dealing with, this is where I'm at, and those people to come around you and to put life back together, that's how you stay on the road of sobriety. And that, but a lot of people don't know how to do it. A lot of people don't understand that this is how it happens, because people are ashamed. People are ashamed to do what you do. People are ashamed to do what my mom or other people have done and say, this is what my life became, and to show it and then to grow from it. And so a lot of people have like closeted addictions. They're closet drinkers, they're closet drug users, and nobody knows. What do you say to somebody like that? To somebody who is ashamed of what they're going through and is afraid to ask for help. What would you say to them?
To me, being completely honest, because that's the way I am, and I feel that no matter what the situation, God can help you through it. It says it in Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And if you pray about it, you're scared, just realize you're never alone.
Yeah.
God is always there with you. If you go to treatment, you can go out of your city, you can go somewhere, you can get away for a little bit and just understand yourself, and it helps a lot whenever you do. I mean, it's hard to go up to people and be like, hey, look, I'm struggling with drugs and alcohol. Like, whenever I got my job interview, he asked me, why did you move to Alexandria? And I looked at him and told him, because I'm an alcoholic and a heroin addict. And he just looked at me. He's like, well, I'm glad you're honest about it, at least.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've been working that job for 10 months. And even on days where things aren't the best, I know I can call my boss and be like, hey, look, this is what's going on. And he'll sit there and talk with me about it because I'm open.
Yeah.
Being open doesn't make you weak. And I'm a big anime fan, and it says it in one of the animes. It's like, being weak is nothing to be ashamed of. Staying weak is.
Definitely. I agree with that.
Yeah, so you got to make that choice in your addiction that you have to want better for yourself. You have to want better for those around you and be selfish in your addiction to where you're doing everything for you to make yourself better. Because if you try to get sober for somebody else, it'll work, but it won't work forever.
Yeah.
Because if something happens with them, you're going to go back. Because that's what you're used to.
Definitely. Oh, man. You just sound so wise in everything you're saying, because it's all so true. You know, if you're living for somebody else, when that falls apart, you're not going to be strong anymore. You know, you're not going to continue because it's all falling apart. Your desire to be clean, your desire to be successful has to become inward, because if it's not, it depends on situations, right? What you're saying is that your sobriety, your desire to love yourself and take care of yourself in a positive way has to be so personal that it's not dependent on any situation. Anything around you can happen. Anything can go on. Anything can be taken away or given to you, but you're going to continue to live the positive lifestyle that you've planned out for yourself. You know, so many, and I don't think it's just, you know, people who struggle with addiction. I think it's everybody, but people who struggle with addiction, who are trying to get clean, are so inwardly focused, so focused on how they can grow that they see things other people don't. But so many people live their life dependent on situations. You know, their emotions depend on how everything's going around them, that they're just tossed back and forth. The Bible talks about how some people are tossed back and forth like a boat in the waves, because they're not firm on anything. You know, the situation that is around them, the circumstances that they're placed in, are what really is how they're going to be, right? If it's sad things around them, they're going to be sad. They're going to live like that. If it's happy, they're going to be happy. If people are nice to them, they're going to be happy. If people are not cool with them, they're just going to be sad all the time. You know, you've realized that that's not how life is supposed to be. You should be the same person yesterday and today and tomorrow, as long as you're continuing to grow, and those things don't affect you. Or they do, but you don't allow them to govern your decisions, right? So tomorrow could be a terrible day for you, but it's not going to govern how you choose to continue to stay sober or continue to be positive about your outlook. That's a powerful thing, and that's something that people who have never struggled with drug addictions don't have. You know, that's something that a lot of people, I think, are missing. But that's something that comes from standing firm in who you are and who God has said you are. You know, you've decided to live to be the person that God has said you are, and that's somebody who is strong in your weakness. You know, like you said, it's not weak to admit you're weak. It's not pathetic to admit you're weak. Admitting you're weak is what leads to being stronger. So that's definitely super powerful.
Yeah, and another way it was put to me was, when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change, you learn to make a choice.
Very true.
And that was said to me in my addiction, and I never understood it until I got sober.
Wow.
But that's something I wish I would have understood better whenever I was using, because I would have realized that by destroying my life, it would have been easier just to change and become sober than to continue to rebuild and destroy my life over and over again.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. So, you know, you're doing really good for yourself. You're making sure that you're plugged into people and to programs that are going to keep you sober. What are some of your goals, you know, for the next year or so?
like I said, I have a job. I'm a cook. I started out as a cook's assistant. Now I'm the kitchen supervisor.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, I want to keep moving up in the company, getting raises, doing good for myself with my job, proving to myself that I can be stable.
Yeah, definitely. Congratulations,
And
dude. You know,
thank you, man.
you deserve to celebrate that and to be happy about that, and you should be proud of it. For those of you who are listening, he had told me in a message that he loves to cook and that he's very interested in that. So you're plugged into a job where you're passionate about what's going on and you're doing well. You're moving up the career ladder. So that's one of your goals. Tell me more.
Eventually, you know, whenever I feel like God has the right time for me, I would like to find a relationship to where it's somebody I can really connect with and that believes the same way I do.
Yeah, definitely.
Because, yeah, I've had relationships with girls to where they don't believe at all, and the only relationships that had some success were with other people who believe the way I do.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like God has revealed that to me for a reason.
Yeah.
So
It's
having
very
a family eventually.
it's very important, you know, especially when you become a family and you become, you know, married. We don't really think about it too much, and you think about it because you're wise. You think about it because you think. But some people don't. Some people get hooked up with somebody who doesn't believe the same way they do, and it doesn't really matter at first. But have a kid, and you want to raise that kid a certain way, and she wants to raise it another way, then it really starts to play, you know. But very, you know, definitely wise. And, you know, I do think, especially for somebody like you who has been through so much and who, you know, really understands that God isn't, you know, for Sundays, he's not, you know, somebody you just look up to, but he's a need. You know, you chose to follow God and chose, you know, to pursue God and a relationship with him because you needed it. Not everybody understands that. Not everybody is a Christian because of that. Some people just do it because it's the right thing to do, because it's true, or, you know, because their parents did it. But you have the understanding that you needed God. And so, you know, I definitely think that you should be with somebody who can understand and relate in the same way, and who will be able to, you know, one day that's going to be your life partner. You know, they should be able to understand the things you've gone through, and maybe they don't have to go through those things to understand, but somebody who's going to be understanding of those things and understand why you're the person that you are, and what a blessing it is to know somebody like you know?
Yeah.
So very cool.
And that was another thing. And a lot of the videos I watched early in my sobriety, I still felt like I was worthless because of what I've done. And in a lot of the videos I was watching, then you were talking about, like, no, you are worth something. God made you for a reason and for a purpose. And that kind of helped me better understand, because everything you say, you dig deep and all that, and I sit there and think about it over and over and relate it to my life and how it can better me.
Yeah.
So I started realizing, like, no, I am worth something. If I wasn't, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, definitely. And I do believe that with everything in me, and even to anybody listening, you know, it doesn't matter what you have done. You still have a purpose. You still have worth. You may not be living up to that worth, but you do have that worth. It's in you, right? That cannot be taken away. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what you're going to do. Worth comes from the person who made you, not the person that, you know, you're not, like you said, you can try to be your God. You can try to be your own God. You can try to be the captain of your own ship. But at the end of the day, you didn't make yourself. So the person who ascribes your value is your creator, right? If I create a piece of art, I'm the only one that can decide how much it costs because I made it. And so God made us. He's the only one that can decide how much we are worth. A painting could look at itself and think, I'm not worth that much. But it doesn't matter. I made it, you know? It doesn't matter if you don't feel it. God made you, so you are. But the idea that we live according to how we feel can be such a dangerous thing. If you feel as if you're worthless and you live according to how you feel, you're going to make some very destructive choices. But even on the days that you feel worthless, if you live according to what God says, you will continue to make wise choices regardless of how you feel. That's something that I've had to learn, because I struggle with addiction. And I struggled with addiction, and I struggle with depression a lot. and I struggle with my self-worth a lot. And I had to understand that it doesn't matter how I feel. It only matters what's true. And so there are days where I don't feel, 100%. There are days where I feel very low. But the choices that I make are still governed according to what God says is true about me. And that changes things a lot, because you can have one bad day, but it doesn't ruin your whole life, Like you had said, one of your lowest moments was because you made one bad choice and it spiraled into everything being taken away. And that can happen so easily. But you have the understanding that you live according to what's true. And so that means even when you have bad days, you still live like you're worth something. And then slowly it begins to change the way that we see ourselves, You look at the mirror and you hate what you see, but you tell yourself that it's not true. Eventually you start to believe what's true. So that's definitely a very powerful thing. And I think it's so awesome that you were able to continue to understand that and continue to fight for that, because so many people feel worthless and they never choose to fight and get out of that pit of despair, but you felt worthless because of choices or because of life. And you've begun to realize that you're worth something, and you definitely are. And the people who are listening definitely are, because it's not dependent on your choices, right? You can't add to your worth and you can't take away from it. So you could live perfectly for the next 50, 60, 70, 80 years, and it wouldn't add to what God already sees in you. But you could live terribly for the next 80 years. It wouldn't take away from what he sees either. And that's the beautiful thing about how God made us, is that we're all worth it to him. But to live like that is a totally different thing, and you're choosing to do that, which is very powerful. And so
I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And so you talk about your testimony, something that you want to share. How do you see that playing out in your life now? That you don't just have experiences, you don't just have a bad past, but you have a testimony. Even that is a different outlook.
So for me, I'm not sure how I want to go about it yet. Like, I know I've done Twitch before for a long time. I'm recently getting back into it. Like, I feel like online would be a good way to be able to share my testimony, but I want to be able to do it in person too. Maybe going to like different rehabs and facilities around me and being like, hey, look, this is what I've been through. This is what all I've had to do to get to where I am, and this is all you have to do it too. Like, the 12-step program I'm in, just these are the steps I took to be able to get to where I am. And it's one of those things that I just want people to understand. Like, it's not a hard, treacherous journey. I mean, I believe life is decisions that you make and facing either positive or negative consequences from them. It's about those decisions that you want to make to reap the positive benefits.
Yeah, definitely. So let's say, I have one of my viewers and they're watching this or listening to this, and they're the ones that text me at 3 a.m. and they tell me, I'm addicted to these pills, or I'm addicted to this or that, and I've been trying to get clean and I keep failing. What's your advice to them? And, not just mentally, but what are some practical ways they can take the first steps to getting sober and to overcoming? What would you tell them?
One, reach out to your family. Reach out for help. Like, I know this is cliche, but if Juice World would have done it sooner, he'd probably still be here.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually you're going to get to a point to where it's going to kill you. Yeah. And it's a scary thought, realizing like, okay, I keep doing this. This is what's going to happen. But the only way to be able to get help is to ask for it. And you have to be able to open yourself up and be vulnerable. And it's hard.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to do it and accept the fact that you may be an alcoholic or an addict and you need help, and go to a treatment center, go talk to people, get in a type of program that's going to help benefit you to where you can understand yourself to a point and understand your higher power, God, to where you're okay with who you are and you're okay with moving forward with your life for whatever purpose he has in store for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you said it so true again, is that it will kill you, or it will get to the point where it's going to kill you. I think a lot of people think that, they might have a little bit of a problem, or they may just be kind of experimenting, but eventually, you had said it earlier, you had touched on it, that, you said, I'll just never take that much again. But you do, and that's the thing. Your body builds up tolerances. You're able to handle more, at least in your head. And, but eventually you're taking so much that even though it only gets you so high, it's so much on your organs. It's so much on your body. And those are the people who die. Overdoses are not always accidental. They're built up to that because you take a certain amount of drugs, and then the next time you take a little bit more, and then eventually you have to take so much for it to do the same thing that it's too much for your body. So I definitely agree. If it's not going to kill you now, it's going to get you to the point where it will. And
because you're always chasing that first time that you got high.
Yeah.
You're always trying to get that feeling again. And eventually, you might start off with 2 pills. But eventually, to get to that level, you're going to need 3. And to get to that level, you're going to need 4. And your body can only handle so many. And you're not going to, you don't know what that point is until you hit it.
Yeah, yep, definitely. So true. So, dude, it's been so awesome talking to you. And, I'm so, I don't want to say proud because I didn't do anything for you, but I'm so amazed by your journey, and so amazed by the way that you have grown and changed, and the outlook that you have on life, especially after everything that you've dealt with. You mentioned Twitch. If you want to take 30 seconds and tell people where they can find you on social media if they want to talk, or if they, tell me all the places where you can be reached.
So the only place I am going to put is my Instagram, because if y'all want to come watch me on Twitch or anything, hit me up on Instagram. I'll give you my name. But if you want to talk to me about maybe your addiction, what you're going through, your depression, what's going on, I'm always available and willing to talk. My Instagram is Jodie_WIL3, which is JODIE_WIL3.
Definitely, and it'll be linked in the video as well. But yeah, dude, I would love to have you on the podcast again. We could talk more about Juice Wrld, more about X, and more about, addiction and overcoming, and the path to living a sober life, and how rewarding that can be. But we're already at an hour, so I don't want to keep them too long. But it's so easy talking to you,
I appreciate it. I only have one request from you.
Definitely.
You have to take back what you said when you said you didn't do anything for me, because you did a lot for me.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. I definitely try. And like I said, I watched so many of my family members be addicted. And so when I knew about Juice Wrld while he was alive, I didn't know about him. I didn't know he was that kind of person. I just thought it was some mumble rapper, And then not only to find out that he's an amazing lyricist, but to find out that he was struggling with addiction. I had said it in one of my earlier videos. When I think of Juice Wrld, I think of my mom. I think of somebody who wanted to get clean but was struggling with it and was failing. And so many people look at him and just see some druggie. But I see a person. I see a person who is a totally, completely different soul when they're clean. Somebody who, you'd love to have a relationship with. Somebody that you love to know. And so when I hear people tell me I'm addicted, I'm struggling, it breaks my heart, but at the same time, I have so much hope for them because I know what they can be if they're clean. I know that they can do amazing things. And, my part of, people in my family are proof of that. And you're proof of that. You're proof that if somebody, who has gone through the worst things possible and who has done things that are bad, they can overcome all of that and become amazing, beautiful people, because that's what they were the whole time anyways. The fact that you're sober now, the fact that you're doing so well for yourself now doesn't change your worth at all. You are always worth the same. That's what people don't understand. That's what I see when I look at my viewers. And that's why I think most of my viewers are not Christian to begin with, is because Christians have this like pompous, unbiased view of themselves or biased view of themselves where they think so highly of themselves. But people who in the Bible, it says, the man who looks at God and says, "Look away from me, for I'm a sinner. I'm so bad. I don't understand how you could love me." That's the dude that really makes a difference. That's the dude that really becomes a true Christian. And so I'm glad that I could help you in any way. And then, you know, that's why I continue to do this, because it gets difficult, you know, and I know it'll definitely be difficult for you and other people. People like to judge more than they like to understand. But this is definitely something that I understand. Definitely. It's definitely something that you understand. And it's definitely something that needs to be done, because there are people that need to hear those things. But I'm very thankful that you said that. And I'm very thankful that I could be anything, you know, of help towards you or anybody else. But I definitely appreciated having you on and being able to talk to you and meet you and celebrate sobriety with you. But that's it for today's podcast. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe. Make sure that if you want to talk to Jodie, you can hit him up and talk to him. Make sure that you support the podcast through Patreon or anything else. And that's it. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Talk Deep. If you would like to reach out to Pastor Jordan, or you would like to be featured on the podcast, find him on Instagram at JordanBradley24. Also, look for him on YouTube. Please remember to subscribe, like, review this podcast, and share it with a friend. If you want to support the show, find Pastor Jordan on Patreon. Thanks again for listening.